Hello once again, my friends.
Welcome, welcome.
So the last two videos I feel are like a three-part series kind of with this one, or they flow together because the idea for the other two came from what's going to be covered in this one.
Yeah, it flows together.
So I want to give you guys some things to think about before we go into the real meat of this video. The universe is an infinite multi-dimensional system of fractal patterns.
It is.
And we see fractals in nature. And so when we're talking about fractals, we mean that the individuated parts contain the whole. And we've talked about how in the Eastern traditions and also in the Western mystery tradition, the ultimate truth is that source, God, prime creator, however you want to call it, lies within every single one of its creations.
It does, and we're a unique expression of that.
Exactly. And we see that when we look at the fractal nature of the universe. Again, the whole is seen in the parts. And there's patterns that exist in nature, like we've talked about how when we look at a brain and we magnify the brains and we see the neurons in the neural network, it looks just like the stars out there in the universe. And the other truth that is emerging is that, as Buddha said, all is Maya. Everything is an illusion. Well, what does he mean by that? Well, now we have the holographic nature of the universe being spoken of by many scientists. And Michael Talbot did a great book I read a couple decades ago, The Holographic Universe. There are others out there as well that say that basically what we are in, this 3D reality, is really a projection from a different density. It's just a projection.
So are you saying the Earth is flat?
Oh, she had to do that. She had to do that. Well, it's interesting, too, because when you look into Hinduism, you see the different lokas, and some of them are depicted as flat. Doesn't mean that we live on a flat planet in this holographic illusion, but that it is a representation of something different, something from a different density that is given rise to this density. So yeah, it's like the 2D universe is projecting the 3D universe, in which case in our 3D reality, the Earth is not flat, but perhaps in the ultimate reality, I guess you could kind of call it flat in that sense, but not in our 3D. So we live in a holographic fractal universe. And then we jump over to something that might seem like it doesn't belong. So the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His years, his days, shall be 120 years. And this is, of course, from the famous Genesis 6, where it talks about the sons of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took as wives whoever they chose. And the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and afterwards as well, when the sons of God had relations with the daughters of men. And they bore them children who became the mighty men of old, men of renown. Perhaps you're Gilgamesh, perhaps you're Samson, perhaps you're, demigods as well in some senses. Very interesting. It is an interesting chapter for sure. That's caused a lot of consternation. And then we have the whole Anunnaki hypothesis. And granted, there are hundreds of thousands of Anunnaki Sumerian cuneiform tablets that have been discovered. And they basically say the story of man is one of a slave race, created to serve the gods. And they talk about the rebellion of this group of beings called the Igigi, who at one time were on Mars, who rebelled against the Anunnaki overlords and said, we're done with doing your manual labor. Get somebody else to do it. So according to these writings, the Anunnaki took what was here on Earth and created a slave race from it. So, that's the question. Did the Anunnaki create mankind? And this is positing 400,000 years ago, whenever it was, perhaps. What did that look like? Well, was it Homo erectus? Was it something ape-like? I don't know about you, but, I never thought about dating a monkey.
No, me neither.
Do you think the sons of God would date a monkey?
I don't know. People are different.
You know, monkeys can be cute, but still, what does it really, really look like? And then we have all these statues that show these Anunnaki beings looking very reptilian and feeding very reptilian little babies with these long heads and all, but very humanoid too, able to walk on 2 feet. And we see other depictions showing Titanic, quote unquote, sized gods leading men about, by the neck in a very, very captive position, arms tied behind their back, noose around the neck, treating them like slaves. Very reminiscent of what, of course, was done to Africans back in the slave times. A very, very horrible practice. Horrible, atrocious practice. Interestingly enough, when people try to justify it in biblical times, it was an accepted practice. Does that make it right? Not in my eyes, not ever.
No,
not ever.
Never.
And people will say, well, these people were starving, and so that was their... No, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. And I don't buy the whole story either, because I think there's things that are hidden there. And from what I feel and have gotten, it wasn't an upgrade that they gave to humanity. It was a downgrade that the Anunnaki did. So this is Dr. Harry Rivera do Genio. And so he's a PhD. He's a quantum mechanics researcher, and he has a PhD in natural medicine from the International Quantum University for Integrative Medicine, Honolulu, Hawaii. Specializes in advanced scalar and plasma energy techniques, quantum morphogenic field physics, and the larger paradigm of science known as the 15-dimensional unified field physics. He has lectured and presented his research and findings at Fran Drescher's Health Summit. Wow, you remember her, the nanny?
Yes.
Oh, God, what an annoying voice. But she was fun. She was. And the Conference on Physics, Chemistry, and Biology of Water, the Best Answer for Cancer Conferences, and Autism One. So this is an interesting gentleman. And he's got a lot of really interesting writings and articles that he has done. Some really fascinating stuff that what's great is he's kind of putting it all together, both science and also perhaps the Anunnaki.
Yeah, he really does a nice job of putting it together so people like me can somewhat understand what's going on.
Okay, guys, so bear with me. Some of these things might be mispronounced at times. 12-strand DNA morphogenetic engineering via holofractal morphogenetic reprogramming of genetic information. So that's this article. And right again, what I found so interesting is that we're talking about 12-strand DNA, which has come up time and time again. There's a reason why we have these numbers in, say, the Bible. For instance, why do we have the 12 tribes of Israel? Why do we have the 12 apostles? Why do we have 12 zodiac signs? And a lot of times people will just say, they'll either take it in a literal sense, all the biblical stories are completely literal, or they'll look at it with such symbolism that they break it all down into astrotheology, of which I think there's a lot of validity in astrotheology.
Yeah, I do too. And, there's a reason for all these different writings.
And then I think there's some other in-betweens as well.
Yeah.
And meaning that it can be basically giving us clues to more than one reality at the same time, and looking at more than one piece of the pie or piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and he does do a really nice job of pulling this together so you can kind of get a grasp on it, because it's pretty out there, but he makes sense of it.
So the abstract is, today's genetics and genomics science is based upon the crude, archaic method of splicing and replacing. And many of you might be familiar with CRISPR technology, for instance. And this is the way, modern science is going. And as we know, they're also heading towards that merger of human and robotics, human and nano. The singularity that Ken Wilber and others have talked about, which, transhumanism, which, I'm definitely not a proponent for personally. And that's just my take on it all. Because I think we could do everything naturally. And, many people right now are so interested in going to South America and having a trip that starts with a substance that starts with an A, ayahuasca, so to speak. I'm trying to avoid triggering a I. Yeah, as you know. And, in order to experience a different reality, perhaps being able to see the matrix upon, within which we live. But again, I think we could do all those things just through meditation. And of course, obviously, it's going to take years, maybe decades, maybe lifetimes of work. But for some, the trip is well worth it because they can experience and see that greater reality that is obscured from most of us all the time. And some of us get glimpses some of the time at that reality. So we live in a holographic fractal, morphogenetic cosmos. Therefore, it's possible to affect specific genes via transmitting resonant frequencies into the morphogenetic field of the cell, utilizing the language of our DNA. So our DNA is language, and DNA does change. It can change, and it does change. And our thoughts are critical. Magnetic, scalar, plasma energy. A chromosome has a magnetic field in between the double helix known as the major groove, as well as a surrounding morphogenetic field comprised of scalar energy, which contains the hollow fractal morphogenetic blueprint of that physical chromosome. If a chromosome is carrying a mutation that causes shortened lifespan or disease, then it is possible to reverse that mutated condition by reprogramming new resonant frequencies utilizing scalar plasma energy and low-frequency magnetic sound waves. Interesting. Did you guys follow that? I hope.
A little bit. I was just thinking about the tuning forks, actually, when I repattern and reprogram people.
Yes. And as we were covering in the last video, just, recognizing that the scalar energy is the same thing that we've talked about when we talk about, say, Wilhelm Reich and orgone, or whether we talk about Ki, Chi, Prana, Vril, the life force. It's that which is all around us. That's what really animates us. We could also look at that as the Holy Spirit or the Shekinah as well. So this is when we're starting to look into things a little bit deeper. So why the 12? Everywhere we look, why 12? Well, again, it's a holographic fractal universe. And fractals, again, contain the blueprint of the all. So when we see the 12, we see the 12 zodiac signs, we see the 12 tribes, the 12 apostles, and there's much, much more. Perhaps here we're also looking at 12-strand DNA as being the original prototype, the original human before the Anunnaki intervention.
So you're saying that you feel like we were downgraded.
Yeah, absolutely. We were downgraded. We weren't upgraded. We were downgraded. That's definitely what I've come to the conclusion of. So when we look at the ages of beings like Methuselah, 969 years, and we look at the ages of these Anunnaki hybrid kings in the Sumerian kings list that ruled for tens of thousands of years. Well, we're going to go a little bit deeper into this article, but perhaps our natural state of being is one in which we live much, much longer, and we have a basic natural healing mechanism in us, which keeps the telomeres from shortening.
And that's really cool, and we can actually meditate on that and resolve that.
We can. And so when we're talking about scalar waves, there's different ways of approaching it. And in the end, right here, he's recommending using a machine, which comes from Tesla's work. And I'm going to go just shoot on down. This is great stuff, by the way. This is great, great, great stuff. There it is there. This is the Rasha 20 series model. And this particular machine, again, is going to put out a certain frequency and create this magnetic scalar field, which he feels can basically reverse the wrongs that have been done to us. Now, I feel like we can do this also through meditation and QiGong and energy work on each other, and especially in groups. Can you imagine if you had 100 people at a healing circle, the type of healing they could do? There would be miracle after miracle. And it's just a matter of intent and truly feeling the emotions. So, he's looking at it from this standpoint, but you can also look at it from other standpoints as well, as developing our own ability to actually use this life force energy to heal each other. Interesting stuff, to say the least.
It really is, and I just keep going back to the energy work we do on people and how it can resolve a lot of these issues.
So, atomic cellular communication between introns occurs when one cell transmits information and imprints those instructions onto the receiving intron via the magnetic vector of a scalar wave. So, again, his mindset is the machine. But when I hear this, what do we talk about when we're talking about how we work with people and entrain? Exactly. We entrain their energies to a higher vibrational state.
Yes, that's what happens when you're in a room full of people. The energies naturally start to rise up and entrain to the highest vibration in that room.
So hydrogen bonds hold together through Coulomb forces, electrically polarized base pairs into a DNA strand. To gain access to this polarization, the hydrogen bonds must be separated, requiring radial outward electric field lines or a vortex field. Since the magnetic field vector is perpendicular to the electric vertical field, a resulting axial direction to the DNA strand is a logical consequence. The motions of the vortex field in the direction of the magnetic field results in longitudinal wave, forming a magnetic scalar wave. And, there are vortexes all around the planet as well, and they will pull in certain energies. Like we felt that at Sedona, strong at Sedona. We went to one of the vortex spots in Sedona, and I literally stepped out of the car, had to just sit right back down because the energy was so intense.
And the trees are actually twisted as they grow up. This is so cool.
So a morphogenetic field is comprised of the primal substance units of consciousness energy, called the source particle. So remember again now with the famous double split experiment and how it's all about consciousness, because energy reacts, the energy in this world reacts to the viewer. And ultimately, you have a body, you're not the body, but you have a body, and you use that body to get around in this 3D experience. You're actually the observer. And so it's the observer's effect that changes reality, molds reality. And so source particle units are the minutest units of consciousness energy, or the assembling sections of matter that create the patterns upon which consciousness in all manifest and unmanifest forms enters materialization. Source particle units are omnipolar, holding the potentiality for all polarities or none. Units of vibrating energy that continuously rotate backward and forward between a state of bipolar light radiation, scalar standing wave, and omnipolar sound vibration. A scalar wave is a transharmonic, in other words, multidimensional, spherical standing energy array that radiates out of a static point with sound light vibration within the morphogenetic field of the greater cosmic unified field of consciousness. While scalar waves appear to move from point to point, they are spherical, fixed points of sound light that are sequentially threaded together within the cosmic fabric of the morphogenetic field. The appearance of the scalar wave movement is created through sequential flashing on light and flashing off sound of scalar wave points that emanate the effect of a flashing linear series of light bulbs. So it gets into an example there of lights on a billboard, and how it appears to be kind of steady, but it's not. And we get into epigenetics, and epigenetics is just a fascinating subject in and of itself. We can rewrite our system. We could rewrite our program. We could rewrite our DNA.
Yeah, with persistency and consistency, absolutely, we can rewrite these things. So this is another thing that they don't teach us from a young age. And if they did, things might be a lot different today.
And this is where it gets really, really good. And see, he's pulling too from a lot of traditions. Like we see the Tree of Life here from Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And now if you look at reality just reading in a literal sense the Torah, you're missing the whole boat. You're completely missing it. There's secrets entwined in there, entwined throughout the Bible. And Santo Spinaci does a good job talking about the Christ energy and being christened, and basically starting the Kundalini process, activating the third eye, and it has to do with the cranial sacral fluid. And as I've shared with you guys, I've practiced cranial sacral therapy for a long time, and it's worked miracles. Really, it's been incredible. So the epigenetic overlay is a biological chemical control sheath that covers and controls the DNA strand function in the current Homo sapiens-2 species. As soon as I saw that -2, I knew what he was getting at. The epigenetic overlay is mutated due to the fact it is affected by electromagnetic and cosmic radiation, which causes the introns to remain inactive. Stationed within the light body seed atom located at the base of the thymus gland, there exists a quantum blueprint that regulates the biorhythms and space-time relationships of the finite life physical atomic body. The quantum morphogenetic instructions are biochemically encrypted as the genetic master instructions within the DNA RNA and the epigenetic overlay. The epigenetic overlay must be reprogrammed in order to affect the gene code. When the epigenetic overlay is reprogrammed via perpetual life frequencies to its organic perpetual life function, the introns sequentially turn on and restore the perpetual life biochemical developments intrinsic to the physical atomic finite life body. And so one book that we have 2 copies of, because Cindy is afraid to lose it, the Gene Keys, gets into a lot of this, really, and somewhere in different, maybe, phraseology.
Yeah, it kind of explains it a little bit better so a layman can understand it.
Yes, and so thank you guys for staying with us here. I know a lot of you guys are getting it, and a lot of you guys are maybe scratching your head a little bit. The 12-sphere perpetual life fractal grid. The cosmos is built upon the original 12-sphere perpetual life fractal grid, which contains the electromagnetic scalar wave sequencers upon which the 12 DNA strand blueprints are arranged. Presently expressed base magnetic 12-sphere perpetual life fractal grid spheres 4, 7, 10 of the left body pillar. So he's referencing over here on the Tree of Life. And so, we have mercy and severity for those of you that have studied the Tree of Life, the left-handed path, the right-handed path, and then we have the path straight up through the middle. So what he's referencing is over here, the grid spheres 4, 7, and 10, the left pillar body, and the magnetic aspects of electromagnetic 12-sphere perpetual life fractal grid, center 1, and base electrical 12-sphere perpetual life fractal grid spheres 2 and 11 on the central pillar body are operating inverted fire letter sequences. Subsequently, the magnetic base codes of the present-day human DNA strand blueprints 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, and 11 presently operate in reverse, making DNA strand interlacing and thus interstellar gateway or Stargate passage via transmutive transharmonic accretion and perpetual life potentially impossible. So what does all that mean? He means to say that our DNA has been screwed with.
Exactly.
He's saying that we have been not only turned off, but inverted in some cases, so that it makes this Stargate ability that we did have, and really what he's referring to is the Merkaba. The Merkaba has been turned off, and our ability to operate as truly galactic humans, as multidimensional human beings, has been turned off. And he even goes and says who did it. He says the Anunnaki did it. So the original celestial human DNA blueprint, the substrand DNA matrix, embodies the scalar grid blueprints for 12 double helix DNA strands, not 12 single strands as the Anunnaki influenced. Modern university science will deliberately misinform us to believe. So, I mean, he's coming straight out and saying that, they're all bought and paid for because they're working under their control. Anunnaki disinformation teachings instill in all levels of the modern educational system endeavor to depict the 12-strand DNA as 6 sets of 2 strands, which in truth is a 6-strand DNA blueprint configuration. However, 12 sets of 2 strands or 12 double helix strands is the original authentic 12-strand DNA blueprint. Each strand blueprint encompasses 12 DNA fire letters that are intended to chemically transmute into 12 large chromosomes per strand blueprint for a total of 144 full chromosomes. 12 scalons equals 12 chromosomes per strand times strands. So here's your 144, your 144,000, your saved people. It's not that you're going to have 144,000 people saved, in the rapture. This is all about DNA. This is all about the fact that we have been downgraded intentionally, and we are gaining the ability to upgrade ourselves again. So this is a Tower of Babel incident that we are witnessing unfold right now. It's again an attempt to stop us from going up there and being like them, stopping the ascension.
And how they've buried this in these mystical books and sending our belief system in a different direction.
The 12 natural chromosomes distinctive to each strand of this 12-strand DNA celestial human DNA is built upon a genetic alphabet of 12, not 4, nucleotide-based chemicals. Our physical bodies should contain a total of 36 full chromosomes. 12 for strand 1, 12 for strand 2, and 12 for strand 3, totaling 36 full chromosomes. Presently, we as the current Homo sapiens number 2, the downgraded species, only have 23 chromosomes. Somehow 13 are missing. And so when you're looking at this, pillar of tree of life, again, that's what he's referencing. This relates to our DNA as well as our consciousness, and as well as other realities, other dimensions, other densities. There are so many different layers to these things.
Yeah, and they've just sent us down a bunch of different belief systems to throw us off, I feel.
So fascinating that he comes straight out and talks all about that. And I'll have this whole link for you guys. You could go into it deeper. That was the stuff I really, really wanted to share with you. Again, the symbolism that we see in the Bible is in other books too. They're referring to something that's really deeply hitting. You can always take stories at face value, and you could get a little bit from it. You could get some basic morals and things like that. But there is a lot of mysteries that are hidden in here that give us the real reality and the true history of humanity.
Well, that's what I want. I want the truth no matter what that looks like.
So guys, as always, thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.